The ARIVL the night sky was quiet above Earth when a strange sound echoed from the stars. People looked up and saw a large shape covering the moon like a shadow from another world. It was not a dream. It was not a satellite. It was a ship. Bigger than any human had ever seen. Governments went silent. The internet went wild. People called it the eye in the sky. It did not attack. It did not move. It simply waited above the planet like it was watching. Then a message came, every screen on. Earth flickered and showed a tall, silver-skinned alien woman. She had glowing eyes and a calm voice. She said, "People of Earth, we come in peace. I am Queen Sorrentha of Zaltrax. I request to meet your bravest and kindest male. He shall be honored beyond measure." The world leaders argued who should go, a soldier, a president, a scientist. But the ship sent another message. "No, we have chosen already." Far away from the cities in a small broken scrapyard lived a man named Eli. He was not rich, not famous, not trained for war. He fixed machines that others had thrown away. He had a small house made of metal sheets and old wires. He had oil stains on his hands and hope in his heart. He also had kindness. He would feed stray dogs. He would give water to thirsty birds, and he would never say no when someone needed help. One morning, while fixing an old engine, a bright blue circle appeared around him. Before he could speak, he was gone. Eli opened his eyes inside a glowing silver hallway. The walls moved like they were alive. Alien symbols blinked on every surface. Tiny floating orbs scanned his body, but did not harm him. Then a door opened, and a soft voice said, "Please walk forward. She is waiting." He stepped inside a round chamber full of light. Aliens in golden robes stood in silence. At the center was a tall throne made of crystal, and sitting on it was the queen. She was tall. Her hair floated like smoke. Her eyes were bright and deep like galaxies. Her dress shimmered like fire. She stood and looked at Eli with a strange smile. "Welcome, you are Eli, the chosen one." Eli looked around with confusion. "I think there is a mistake. I fix junk. I am no one special." The queen walked closer. "You are special not because of power, but because of your heart. I have ruled for 1,000 years, and I have met a man like you." The chamber was silent. Eli felt small under her gaze. But then he saw something move in the shadows behind the throne. Hidden near the wall was a weak and thin alien woman. She looked hurt. Her eyes were scared. Her clothes were torn. She was not like the others. She looked like she did not belong here. Eli took a step toward her. The queen spoke louder. "I offer myself to you. You may live in my palace. You may rule by my side. You may have power beyond your dreams." Eli looked at the queen. Then he looked again at the weak alien woman in the corner. "Who is she?" he asked. The queen paused. "A servant. A broken one. She has no place here." Eli walked past the queen without fear. He knelt beside the alien woman. She flinched but did not move. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She looked at him with wide eyes. "No one ever asked me that before," she whispered. The golden-robed aliens looked at each other. The queen's smile faded. Eli helped the woman stand. Her legs shook, but she held on to him. "I don't want a throne," Eli said. "I want to help her." The chamber went cold. The queen stared at him. "You reject me for her?" Eli nodded. "Yes, because no one deserves to be forgotten." The lights in the chamber dimmed. The queen's eyes glowed brighter, but she said nothing. Eli held the alien woman close and whispered, "You are not alone anymore." The ship rumbled. The walls shook. The future of Earth had just changed, and above the planet, in the eye of the sky, something ancient had awakened. Abandoned Onethi. Stars outside the alien ship looked cold and far. Inside the dark hallway, Eli walked slowly with the weak alien woman by his side. Her steps were soft like she was afraid the floor would vanish. The silver walls around them hummed like they were alive. Strange symbols blinked, then faded. No one stopped them. No one said a word. The silence was louder than a storm. The woman did not speak at first. She only looked at Eli with eyes full of fear and questions. Her hands were shaking, but she held onto his arm like he was the last safe thing in the world. Eli looked at her and tried to smile. "What is your name?" he asked. She looked down then up. Her voice was small. "Lyra, a soft name for someone who had seen too much pain." She had deep blue skin with silver scars like lightning across her arms. Her hair was short and uneven, like someone had cut it without care. She was nothing like the queen who stood tall in gold. Light, but she was real, and Eli felt that they entered a small chamber with soft lights and no guards. A round chair floated in the center. An alien cloth rested on one side. Eli helped Lyra sit. She closed her eyes for a moment and breathed like it was her first breath in years. "Why were you hiding behind the throne?" Eli asked gently. Lyra did not speak right away. Her fingers touched the scars on her arm, like they were telling her story in silence. "I was once part of the Queen's court," she whispered. "Long ago I was sent to Earth with a team to collect energy stones from human machines. We crashed, the others left me behind. They told her I was dead, but I lived alone, hidden." Eli sat beside her. "Why would they lie?" Lyra looked up, with eyes full of old tears. "Because I was born from the lower caste. Not royal, not special. To them I was a tool, not a person." The words sank like heavy stones. Eli had seen broken machines, broken walls, but never a person treated like nothing. "And the Queen?" he asked. "She never searched for you." Lyra smiled, but it was not a happy smile. She knew she chose to forget me, one less voice to question her ways. Eli felt something burn inside his chest, not anger, but a deep need to protect, to stand, to speak when no one else would. "She offered herself to me," Eli said slowly, but her eyes were empty. "Yours are not." Lyra looked surprised. No one had said such words to her before. Not in her world, not in her life. Far above their heads the Queen watched. Through a glass screen, her face showed no emotion, but her hand gripped the arm of her throne with silent force. She spoke to the air, and it answered. "Send 2 shadows, quietly, make it look like an accident." Back in the quiet room, Eli gave Lyra some water from a small alien flask. She drank slowly. Her hand steadied, her voice grew stronger. "Why did you choose me instead of her?" she asked. Eli leaned back and thought for a moment. "Because you looked at me like a person, not a trophy, not a prize." Lyra lowered her head again. Tears touched the edge of her smile. It was the first time someone saw her, not her skin, not her status, just her then. The lights flickered, just once. Then again the room grew colder. Eli stood quickly. Something felt wrong. Had seen enough bad wiring in his life to know this was not natural. The door behind them opened. 2 tall figures stepped in without sound. Their bodies were made of black armor with no face, only glowing red lines where eyes should be. Eli stepped in front of Lyra. "What do you want?" he shouted. The figures said nothing. They raised their arms and weapons unfolded like spider legs. Eli grabbed a metal stool and swung it hard. One figure fell back but did not stop. The other fired a pulse of blue light. Lyra stood up and raised her arm. A small device on her wrist blinked. A shield of light appeared in front of them. The blast hit the shield and vanished. "You had a shield this whole time?" Eli asked with wide eyes. Lyra looked at the device and nodded. "I thought it was broken. I was wrong." They ran from the room. The shadows followed. Doors closed behind them, but opened ahead like the ship itself was watching. They turned corner after corner, breathless, wounded, but not alone. Finally they reached an old control room. Lyra pressed her hand on a panel. It scanned her and opened a hidden wall. Inside was a small ship. Dusty, old, but ready. "Can you fly this?" Eli asked. Lyra smiled again, this time with fire in her eyes. "Can try." As the enemy pounded at the door, the ship came alive. Engines roared, and Lyra and Eli launched into the stars. They did not look back, because now they had each other. Taki Queen's Mask stars passed like rivers of fire as the stolen ship moved through space. Eli sat near the front window while Lyra worked with the controls. Her hands moved quickly, pressing glowing symbols and turning small levers. The ship was old, but full of secrets. It obeyed her like a lost child found its mother. Eli looked at her with quiet eyes. She was stronger than he thought, not because she had tech or powers, But because she survived everything and still moved forward. "Where are we going?" he asked. Lyra looked at a blinking map on the screen. "Somewhere the Queen cannot find us. Not yet. We need answers before we fight her." Back on the mothership, the Queen stood alone in her private chamber. The walls were covered in mirrors. Each mirror showed a different version of her. One looked kind, one looked cruel, one looked tired, and one looked scared. She waved her hand and the mirrors turned dark. The Queen touched her crown and whispered to the silence, "Why did he choose her? Why not me? I am perfect. I am eternal." A voice answered from the shadows. It was deep and slow, like oil dripping. In silence, because perfection cannot be loved, only feared. The Queen turned and looked into the dark corner. An old advisor stepped forward with silver skin and no eyes. He bowed low. "Your Grace, shall we begin the charm process?" The Queen nodded. Slowly, "Yes, bring him back, but do not harm him. He must want a return." Far away, Eli and Lyra landed on a quiet moon with red soil and thin air. The sky was purple and the sun looked tired. Old machines lay broken in the sand like skeletons of forgotten dreams. They entered a small building half buried in rock. Inside were lights still flickering after years, and a round table made of glass. Lyra placed a silver orb in the center of the table. It glowed and showed a map of star systems. Lines connected planets and ships. And at the center was the Queen's mothership. "This map was made by my people before they were destroyed." Lyra said, "The Queen used to be different. She wanted peace. But then she found something buried in the stars, something that changed her." Eli leaned closer. "What did she find?" Lyra tapped the map and a small symbol blinked, a dark shape with red eyes and long wings. "She found a voice, not a being, not a body. Just a voice in the void. It promised her power and she listened." Eli sat back and stared at the symbol. "So she was not always evil?" Lyra shook her head. "No, she was once a healer. She wanted to protect us. But the voice made her see fear and kindness. It made her believe that control was safety." Outside, the sky turned darker. A strange energy moved across the moon, like mist made of whispers. Lyra suddenly stood. "They found us. Her charm agents are near." Eli grabbed a small tool bag from the ship. Not much, but he never liked being empty-handed. They ran into the caves behind the building. The walls were rough and cold, the air thin and dry. But it was better than facing the Queen's charmers in the open. Inside the cave, they saw lights ahead. 3 figures walked slowly. They wore white cloaks and golden masks. Their hands held no weapons, only small glowing cubes. One of them spoke without moving his mouth. "You are safe. Come back. The Queen forgives all." Eli felt a strange pull in his mind. His thoughts became slow, like walking through water. He saw images of a palace of warmth, of smiles of peace. But Lyra grabbed his arm. Her touch burned away the false peace. "Do not listen. They are planting lies." The charmers moved closer, their cubes glowing brighter. They showed visions of Lyra leaving him, of her betraying him, of her joining the Queen again. Closed his eyes and remembered the scrapyard, the smell of oil, the silence of stars. And the moment he saw Lyra curled in the dark corner of the throne room, he opened his eyes and said one word: "No." The charmers stopped. Their cubes flickered. Their masks cracked. One of them stepped back like something hit him. Lyra stepped forward and raised her hand. From her bracelet, a burst of light exploded. The charmers screamed and vanished into dust. Silence returned, but the cave shook slightly. Something deeper had heard them. They returned to the surface, the sky now full of moving stars. Not natural ships, Zote's eyes in the dark. "We cannot run forever," Eli said. Lyra nodded slowly. "Then we stop running." She opened the ship's hidden panel and pulled out a long metal case. Inside was a piece of armor with symbols older than Earth itself. This belonged to the first protector of Zoltrax. She said, "Now it belongs to us." Eli looked at the armor and then at her. "Let's end her mask. Let's show them her real face." The wind on the moon blew softly, and the stars watched in silence. OFZALTRX space was never silent for those who listened with pain. The stars held memories, and the wind between worlds carried old voices. Eli stood near the edge of the ship watching tiny planets pass like forgotten marbles beside him. Lyra wore the ancient armor made for heroes long dead. Did not shine. It did not glow. It simply fit her like it had been waiting. They were heading toward a place called Zorinth Station. Not on any map. Not on any screen hidden inside the rings of a dead planet where no light could follow. Lyra said truth. Lived there, buried under lies and dust. Eli asked her what they would find. Lyra said, proof of what the Queen truly is and what she is becoming. Back on the mothership, the Queen stood in a silent hall made of black glass. Her crown was now fused to her skin. Her eyes no longer blinked. The voice in the shadows whispered louder each day. It told her secrets, it told her lies, and she believed them both. She watched recordings of Eli and Lyra. She studied their steps, their words, their eyes. They want the station, she said with a smile that was no longer kind. Let them have it. Let them see what truth really costs. At Zorinth Station, the ship moved through icy rings like a ghost. Old satellites floated dead, wires like frozen vines twisted. Around empty towers, they landed inside a dome with cracked windows and lights that flickered without rhythm. Eli coughed as the air turned dry and strange. Lyra touched a panel, and the walls responded like they remembered her. This place was once a library, she said, not for books, but for memories. They entered a round room filled with silver orbs floating in slow circles. Each orb held voices, images, thoughts left behind by Zoltrak's elders. Lyra picked one and placed it near Eli's head. Orb opened and showed the pasta tall woman stood in a white room. It was the Queen, but younger, without armor. Without power, she spoke to a crowd of children, her words soft. Zoltrax must never rule with fear. We share, we protect, we love. The orb shifted. Time moved. The same Queen now stood in a dark cave. Before her floated the shadow, the voice without a body. It whispered promises. You will lose everything if you stay weak. Take control, rule, crush doubt. The Queen hesitated. Then she nodded the orb. Fatadili sat back, his chest heavy. She chose this path not out of greed, but fear. Lyra looked at him with a strange sadness. Fear can build monsters faster than hate. Another orb floated near. This one glowed red. Lyra touched it. It showed her younger. In chains, thrown into the scrapyard, a voice said, this one is broken. Leave her with the humans. They will forget her. Eli turned away, his hands in fists. She left you like garbage, and now she wears kindness like a mask. Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder. She's not just a mask, she's the fear behind it. Suddenly the walls of the station groaned. The lights went out and the ground began to shake. Eli grabbed his tool bag. Lyra pulled out her staff. Doors opened, not by code, but by force. A new figure entered, wearing a twisted version of Zoltrak's armor, half machine, half solit. Spoke with a broken voice. I was the first truth keeper. The Queen made me her weapon. Now I guard her lies. Eli stepped forward. We came for truth, not war. The truth keeper laughed without joy, then bleed for it. A battle began, fast, silent, deadly. Lyra moved like lightning. Eli threw sparks from his tools. Together they fought as one. The truth keeper fell after a long struggle. His mask broke. Inside was a face not so different from Lyra's. Tired, lost. Before dying, he whispered, in the core, the final orb. She cannot hide it forever. They rushed to the center chamber. A vault of dark metal opened to their presence. Inside was a single golden orb. It floated with calm. It sang in a soft voice like a lullaby from a dying star. Lyra held it near. The orb showed the Queen as she truly was now, her body hollow, her mind tangled with the shadow, her soul burning from within. She was no longer just Queen Sorrentha, she was something else, a vessel, a shell. Eli looked at the vision. She cannot be saved, can she? Lyra closed her eyes. Maybe not, but we can save those still watching her. They left the station with the orb safe in their hands, and behind them, Zorinth fell into silence. Once more in the ship, Eli asked, what now? Lyra answered with a steady voice. Now we show the galaxy her truth, and let them decide who to follow. The stars ahead looked brighter, but darker ones still waited behind Resistance HFY as the stars above were silent, but the galaxy was not sleeping anymore. Whispers moved like waves through systems both near and far. A human had refused the Queen. An outcast alien had survived, and together they carried something the Queen feared more than weapons. They carried truth inside the ship. Ely sat beside the golden orb as it floated gently near the engine room. Its glow touched the metal walls like firelight on water. It hummed in a voice that had no language, yet every heart could feel it. Lyra walked in wearing her armor not for battle but for presence. Each step she took reminded Ely that she was not hiding anymore. She was leading. "We need help," Ely said while watching the orb. "People will not follow us just because we tell them truth. They will need to see it for themselves, and some will still choose the Queen even after that." Lyra nodded. "I know where to go, a place she does not speak about, because it belongs to those who once defied her." She entered a code into the ship's console. A map appeared showing a planet covered in green and ash. Ely read its name with care. Veridon. Lyra looked ahead with quiet fire in her voice. "My people once called it the last breath of hope." The ship jumped through dark space. No bright portals. Just sudden movement like skipping time between heartbeats. Veridon was not welcoming. Black clouds covered its skies, and the ground burned in places where nothing should live. Yet as they flew lower, they saw shapes moving beneath the ash homes built under cliffs, lights powered by old tech and eyes watching from shadows. They landed near a broken tower made from ship parts and bones of large beasts. Lyra stepped out first. Ely followed, carrying the orb in a sealed case made from the vault at Zorinth. From the cliffs a figure emerged, not tall, not armored, but strong in presence. Her voice echoed without anger. "You brought a human to Veridon. Are you trying to wake the dead?" Lyra stepped forward without fear. "I bring truth and a reason to rise again." The figure came closer. She had gray skin and silver tattoos that moved with her breath. She looked at Lyra with a mix of memory and pain. "I know your face. You were cast out, left behind." Lyra replied with calm, "And still I stand." The two touched hands and the air around them shifted. Ely could feel something pass between them. Not words, something older. Then the figure looked at him. "Why does this human walk among us?" Ely spoke not as a soldier or a leader. "I am not special. I just chose not to look away when someone was hurting." The woman smiled with no joy. "Then you are already better than most kings." That night a council gathered inside a hidden chamber built into the roots of a dead tree. Old warriors, young minds, broken machines turned into thinking tools. Lyra placed the orb at the center. It floated and showed the Queen as she was now, a burning soul trapped inside a golden shell. A voice not her own whispering through her every command. The room was silent. Then came the whispers, the questions, the fire. "They must see it," someone said. "All of them," said another. "The Queen has ruled too long with lies. Now she must face herself." Lyra spoke with steady hands. "We do not bring war, we bring choice. But if she answers with violence, we will not fall silent again." Ely stood and raised the orb high. "Let the galaxy watch, and let the galaxy decide." Within hours messages left Veridon like sparks in dry grass. Every hidden outpost, every neutral ship, every wandering voice between stars received the signal. It was not a call to war. It was a question with fire behind it. Do you still follow the crown, or do you finally see the face behind the mask? Back on the mothership, the Queen stood in front of a dark mirror. She watched the signal spread. Her teeth clenched, her skin cracked at the edges of her smile. She turned to her guards. "Send the reclaimers, find them, burn Veridon, and bring me the traitors alive." On Veridon, the sky turned red as enemy ships entered orbit. The ground shook, the cliffs cracked, the Resistance prepared, old weapons activated. Shields once forgotten rose again, and voices that had stayed quiet for years now shouted in one sound. No more chains, no more fear, no more lies. Ely stood beside Lyra, holding a makeshift weapon built from scrap and soul. She smiled at him. Not because she knew they would win, but because they had already stopped running. The Queen was coming, and this time the galaxy would be watching. SJWDOWVAR. Earth turned gold, then black as the Queen's fleet arrived in silence. Not with noise or fire, but with presence so heavy, even the wind forgot how to move. People looked up and saw the shadow stretching across the sky like a second night. The stars disappeared behind her ships, and fear rose from the oceans to the mountains. She had come not to speak, not to ask, but to take inside. Her throne ship she stood tall, in armor forged from light and sorrow. Her crown pulsed like a heartbeat, connected to something far beyond the stars. Beside her stood machines with bones, eyes without faces, soldiers who had forgotten they were once alive. She stared at Earth through a screen that showed every city, every tower, every soul. This world was supposed to kneel, she whispered. Now it dares to question. On Veridan the resistance stood ready. Ships built from ruins now flew like arrows of fire. Eli stood on the bridge of a hybrid vessel made from human steel and alien wings. It was small but fast, and it carried a weapon not of war, but of truth. Beside him Lyra wore her full armor, her eyes bright like suns rising in a storm. She had never looked more alive, more herself. She placed her hand on Eli's shoulder. She is not just coming for the truth. She is coming for you. Eli nodded. Then we show her we are not afraid to look back. The resistance ships broke through clouds and entered Earth's orbit. The Queen's fleet moved like black serpents opening their jaws. But before the first strike, a signal echoed through every ship. A voice. The orb. Broadcasting the truth across every screen in space. Images of the Queen before the voice, before the crown fused to her skin, before she chose control over care. Gasps filled ships, silence filled halls, and for a brief moment, her fleet paused. But the voice returned. The voice inside her, twisting her thoughts, feeding her fear. She screamed and pointed forward. Burn. Them burn the world that defies me. Lasers tore the silence, missiles danced through darkness, and ships collided like waves against cliffs. Eli flew through the storm like he was born in it, diving, spinning, dodging. He was no soldier, but he had something more: instinct, purpose. Lyra's voice guided him through every turn. Behind them resistance fighters lit the void with courage. Below them Earth watched in awe and fear. The people had no weapons, but they had screens, and they saw everything. They saw the Queen's face breaking, her mask no longer holding her rage. Her eyes glowing not with power but with pain. She entered the battle herself. Her throne ship transformed into a mech made of starlight and fury. She moved like thunder, and all ships scattered like birds before a storm. Eli turned to face her. She is coming for us. Lyra stood at the front of the ship. She raised her staff and spoke to the Queen across open space. You were once my sister, my ruler, my light. Now you are a shadow that cannot cast warmth. The Queen's voice thundered back. You were weak then, and you are broken now. You think this human gives you strength, but he only delays the end. Eli replied without fear. I did not come to defeat you, I came to remind you what you lost. The Queen charged. A blast of pure energy tore through space. Eli swerved, but the ship shook. Sparks flew. Alarms screamed. Lyra jumped. She launched from the ship in her ancient armor. Wings of light spread behind her as she flew straight toward the Queen. They clashed above Earth like two comets meeting at the end of time. Staff against blade, fire against will. Each hit echoed across the sky. Ships froze to watch, hearts stopped to listen. Eli tried to follow, but the ship was damaged. He watched from above as Lyra fought like history itself had chosen her to end this. Then the Queen struck. A blast of dark energy hit Lyra's chest. She fell, burning, spinning. Eli screamed, but she did not fall alone. With her last breath of flight, she threw her staff. It hit the Queen's mech center. The truth orb hidden inside it cracked the power core. The Queen froze. Her body shook. The voice inside her screamed louder than ever. Eli flew forward, ignoring the fire, the warnings, everything. Reached Lyra in freefall, grabbed her, held her. I got you, he whispered, though his ship was breaking. The Queen's mech exploded in light, But not fire, a wave of memory spread instead. Memories she had hidden, faces she had erased, names she had forgotten. Fleets stopped, the soldiers paused. The battle died in the silence of truth. The queen floated in space, her armor gone, her crown broken. She looked at Eli and Lyra with eyes no longer glowing. "Why did you choose her?" she asked with a voice almost human. Eli looked at Lyra, then back at her. Because she never wanted a throne, only a voice. The queen closed her eyes and drifted into shadow, and Earth for the first time in many years breathed without fear. A new HFY the stars had never looked so calm. For the first time in many lifetimes there was no shadow in the sky. No fire waiting behind clouds, no voice whispering across galaxies with a promise of power. The queen was gone, her crown shattered. Across the cold of space, her army silent, her war ended by truth, not destruction above Earth. 1,000 ships floated like leaves caught in windless air. Some carried scars, some carried survivors. All carried stories. In the center of it all flew a ship with broken wings but a glowing heart inside that ship. Eli sat holding Lyra's hand, her armor cracked, her breath slow, but she was alive. Medical drones moved around them, gently fixing burns, sealing wounds, but the healing she needed most was already in his voice. "You held the sky back," he whispered as she opened her eyes. "You brought her down without hate." Lyra looked at him, her voice dry like the wind after a storm. "I didn't fight her to win, I fought her to wake her, and maybe in the end she had across Earth." People stepped out from buildings and shelters. They looked up not in fear, but in wonder. Screens showed the final battle. Not of weapons, but of will. The truth had spread like sunlight after years of cold. Children saw heroes not because they had power, but because they had chosen kindness when it was hardest on. Veridan, a celebration began without music or lights. Only a shared silence that meant survival. The elders lit fires in memory of those who had waited for freedom without seeing it. Names were spoken, even the queen's, not with hate, but with the weight of lessons learned. The resistance now had no war to fight, but a galaxy to rebuild, one voice at a time. Eli and Lyra were invited to speak to the new council forming above Earth. The chamber was built from metal recovered from wrecked ships. Each wall carried the names of those lost, each seat carved from the remains of the queen's throne. Lyra stood before them in robes of silver and blue. She no longer needed armor. Her presence was enough. "We are not here to lead," she said. "We are here to remind you of what happens when we stop listening to the small voices, to the broken ones, to the forgotten corners of our worlds." Eli stood beside her, holding the orb that once revealed the truth. Now it held something new, hope. A message recorded by Lyra and shared freely to all corners of space. He spoke not like a hero, but like the man he had always been, a mechanic with calloused hands, and a simple dream. "I was never meant to change the galaxy. I just didn't want to walk past someone who was hurting. If that makes me dangerous, then maybe we all should be a little more dangerous." The room rose in silent agreement, not with cheers, but with a feeling that reached far beyond words. After the council, Eli and Lyra returned to the edge of Earth's orbit. There they built something new, not a fortress, not a palace, but a home, a floating garden made from parts of the ship that saved them. Filled with green life, solar panels, and open air, it became a place for those with no flag, no rank, only a need to feel heard. Refugees from broken colonies, old rebels seeking peace, young minds who had only seen war, all were welcome. And above the entrance, written in human and alien script, were the words, "You are not forgotten." Time passed. Not fast, not slow, just enough. Eli learned to grow food from alien soil. Lyra taught children the lost songs of Zaltrax. Together they built not just a shelter, but a reason to stay alive. One evening, as stars returned in quiet glow, Lyra sat beside Eli under a dome of glass. She looked at the sky that once held fear and now held only light. "Would you still choose me again?" she asked without looking at him. Eli smiled. Not with words, but with the way his hand reached for hers, like it always had. "Every time," he said, with a voice full of every journey they had walked together, from scrapyards to battles, from silence to song. They sat together not as saviors, not as symbols, but as reminders that one choice, one moment of kindness can change everything, and across the stars, that truth kept moving from world to world. Not shouted, but shared. The crown had fallen, the queen had faded, but the light, the real light, had only just begun to rise. This was not the end. This was the beginning, the end, or perhaps just another chapter waiting to be written.